So, healthy aging is really important to me. And on today's podcast episode, I'd really like to go into the more in more detail about why I decided to make a podcast all about healthy aging and what we can do to improve our aging processes, our longevity, and just living better. So, healthy aging has been really prevalent in my life for very many years now. And I would say that it first came to my attention when I was a really young girl and I saw family members struggling with mobility and not being able to attend family events just because they didn't have the physical mobility to be able to attend events, or it wasn't safe for them. And this to me just made me believe that becoming frail and disabled in later life was inevitable. But when I went to university in 2015, I studied sports science and I studied a course or a unit called GP referral, or exercise and physical activity prescription and promotion, where we looked into how we can use exercise as a tool to manage long-term health conditions. And this was the first time that I ever realized that living in, there is a fly, get away, living in kind of really low level physical independence, or living with low level physical independence, living with disability as a result of sedentary living was preventable and was manageable. And as I realized that, it really changed my passion and my career kind of trajectory, because I realized that I no longer wanted to focus on elite sport. I really wanted to focus on supporting people who had lived sedentary lives, who had developed long-term health conditions and other diseases, and to be able to help them live happy lives. I know that when I'm injured, or for whatever reason I can't do what I want to do, I become so frustrated. And I could only imagine how upsetting it was for people who could no longer attend social events because of their health, or can no longer do certain things that they used to find easy. So in 2018, I graduated and I decided that I wanted to start my own business. I needed some sort of income, so I also started as an athletic development coach in a private school, and as a part-time employee, and then was running my business on the side. And a lady called Brenda came to me, and I think she was probably in her late 80s at that stage, and she wanted somebody to be able to help her improve her posture and her mobility, because she'd realized that she'd really started to lose her physical independence. And that was the start of my love for working with older people. And I've learned so much since then. And it's been a reflection of life and wisdom and experience, and then my interpretation of what it's going to take to be able to reach my 90th birthday and feel physically strong, feel like I don't have unnecessary obstacles in my way, and so that I am able to really focus on quality of life without worrying about physical health conditions, mental health conditions, and all of those things that can be a symptom, or in some cases, the majority cause of sedentary living. So as a result of all of this experience and all my qualifications, I decided that I really wanted to focus on the later life sector. And when I was listening to other health podcasts, something that really stood out to me, or didn't stand out to me, was the lack of discussion around healthy aging. It was all about the now, all about the present, all about aesthetics, and what we can do now. And that's so important. And I'm not kind of disregarding the importance of the present and what we need to do now, because that's a huge part of what it takes to live and be healthy in later life. But I wanted to bring up the fact that we need to take action now with a conscious thought around the future and what our future looks like, and whether we want to be that 90-year-old who is jumping off diving boards and walking along the beach and taking their dog on 2-hour walks, or do we want to be that 90-year-old who is in and out of the hospital suffering with 6 different long-term health conditions, who has to rely on their family members to care for them, who has to organise domiciliary care, and has to rely on somebody to do their weekly shop. I know that I do not want to be that person. I want to be the 90-year-old that goes on those long walks, that gets to travel the world, that gets to do things without having to worry about her health. And that's why I really started this podcast, because I wanted to look at things that we could do now in the present to improve our long-term health, but also with a conscious theme of so that we can live like this when we reach this age. Now, our lives can change within a fraction of a second, and I totally acknowledge that. But I think what's really important is that we do things with the hope that we get to live till we're 90. You know, the average living age for a woman in the UK is, I think, 86 and a quarter, and the average age is 84 and a half for a man. Don't quote me, but it's around those, like maybe a year or two difference. But what I'm seeing and what I'm starting to realize is that the most of the people that I'm working with are way past 86 and are still very mobile and are traveling the world and still have hopes and dreams. And you can see that on social media from all of these kind of older adult or later life influencers. It's so interesting that they value exercise, and put evidence, scientific evidence aside. All the scientific evidence supports the fact that we should be doing exercise, we shouldn't be sedentary, we should be eating properly. Like, we know what it takes, we know the equation for healthy life and later life. Do we do it? Sometimes not, we don't, right? But aside from that, there is real life evidence of people in their 90s on social media doing the most amazing things, achieving the most amazing things in their lives. And we need to look at those role models and utilize them as people who can encourage us to and motivate us to take that action now. I totally understand some of these people that we see on social media, they have just started, they've just started in their 60s, let's say, living a healthy life. Maybe before that they didn't, but they had a health condition, or they had a wake up call or something that made them change the way that they lived. And they are changing that theme in their life of poor choices, unhealthy actions, detrimental behaviors, all of those things, so that they can live better, so that they can play with their grandchildren. And I think fundamentally, this podcast, even if it doesn't reach very many people, is for me to be able to learn about what it takes to age well, and so that I have all the tools that I need to achieve the best outcomes in later life. And I don't know if this is the first episode that you're listening to or you're a regular listener, but I talk to experts in their own fields and I learn so much. The other podcast episodes that I do, some of them are massively kind of already knowledge based, but sometimes I have to go away and actually learn about certain topics to be able to deliver the details about them. And as a result of that, I learned so much. I have a podcast episode about Tai Chi, and I have only done Tai Chi once or twice in my life, and this episode has really helped me to understand the benefits of Tai Chi, and it's motivated me to not kind of poo-poo Tai Chi because the experiences that I have had haven't been the best. So next time that opportunity comes around, I will be trying it out. I will give it a go. And I'm much more open-minded. I'm also learning so much about nutrition. And if you haven't heard my nutrition podcast episodes, please go back and have a listen to them because they are incredible. They're so insightful. Martina, the nutritionist that I talked to, has so much knowledge in this field. And I think it can really help and benefit people's approach to their day-to-day eating choices, especially me. You know, like I still think about everything she said on that podcast episode with me, and I'm thinking, gosh, this is too high sugar for me to start my day off eating this. I need to balance it out with more fatty foods or reduce the sugar intake, you know. And that's not artificial sugars, that is things like fruit, you know. You just go and listen to the podcast episode, it's really interesting and we do talk about it. So this is kind of a brief summary of why I started the How to Age Well podcast. A little bit about my journey. I am a personal trainer, sports scientist, chartered physical activity professional. I've been working in the industry for many, many years. My first job was at a gym, Curves, and we do have Curves here in the UK. The one I work at no longer exists, but I started working there at 16 and then just continued to go into kind of sports and physical activity roles. I, as I said, have a degree in this field, and I've worked within like high clinical environments, working with severe long-term health conditions, and kind of highly disabled individuals, full-time wheelchair users with a plethora of long-term health conditions associated. And I've learned so much. And I think through that experience, it half qualifies me to be able to talk about these things, just because I've had those conversations with people with lived experience. I've been able to learn the tools necessary to support people with those health conditions. And then I've been able to take that away and look at my own life and say, right, this is how we're going to make a difference. This is how you're going to live your life optimally. You know, I'm a big believer in we have one life, and this is our one chance to make the most of it. And I want to do that. I want to make those choices that are going to enable me to live the best life possible with the really short amount of time that we have on this planet. You know, I'm in my 20s and I look at people in their 80s and 90s and just think, what lives, they've lived amazing lives. I've also looked at people in their 50s. Some people in their 50s have never achieved anything. And I'm not talking about career-wise or monetary-wise. I'm just talking about internal purpose. And then I've looked at other people in their 50s and been like, oh my gosh, what an incredible human being you are. You have lived and you have experienced so much emotion, social interaction, culture, diversity. And that's the type of person that I want to be. I want to be able to reach my 40s and 50s and say, I've really lived a life. And I mean, God forbid something terrible happened to me at such a young age, but be okay with dying and being like, I did everything I could. I did everything I could with the time that I had, and I achieved so much, and that's okay. You know, I don't want to die, obviously. And I think death is an amazing subject to be had or to be discussed. And maybe that's something that I talk about on another podcast episode, because it really intertwines in that whole healthy aging thing, you know, aging, life, death, recovery, and all of those kind of activities that revolve around aging. And ultimately we all die, right? And we either die happy or we die with lots of regret. And I do not want to be that person. And I think fundamentally, that's what I want you guys to take away from this podcast episode is the tools that you can accumulate so that you can make better choices, that you can look back in 20 years' time and think, I did so much. I'm so pleased that I made that choice, or I'm so pleased that I actioned that. And it will make such a difference to you as a human being in the present, in the future. And everything happens based on action. And if we don't make those actions, or we don't take those actions, then nothing happens. So thank you for listening to my little monologue about why I started this podcast. And please feel free to check out some of my other episodes. And I hope you like them so that you follow, subscribe, and please do rate the podcast. Thank you so much.